So we're talking healthy networks today, how they're designed, how they're deployed, and how they're managed. We're going to double click into some topics as well around resiliency, the technology behind them, how IT operational professionals can move from reactive postures to proactive postures, and how they can leverage the cloud for scale and additional resiliency. So to set a little more context, in today's modern hybrid world, businesses need agility. This could be retail, omni-channel, so online and in-store. It could be smart city deployments through governments and municipalities, and virtualized healthcare. So with that, I'll introduce myself. I'll be the moderator. My name is Will Townsend. I'm the Vice President and Principal Analyst for the Networking and Security Practices at More Insights and Strategy. And joining me today is Ed and Alyssa. Alyssa, let's start with you with a quick introduction.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Alyssa Clausing. I'm the VP of Zayo's Packet Product Suite. So I lead the product teams for internet access, IPVPN, Ethernet products, cloud connectivity, and DDoS protection.
Awesome. Welcome, Alyssa, and Ed, take it away.
Thanks, Will. Ed Loveless here. I have accountability for our SD-WAN, SASE, and our digital experience portfolios.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into it. We've got 5 topic areas, and I want to hit the first one. And so I think it would make a lot of sense to define exactly what is a healthy network. And Ed, let's start with you.
Well, I think with a healthy network, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And a healthy network is one that you understand and you have insights into, and you have the ability to respond to and to speak to. If your boss asks you how it's going, you say, I don't know. That's not a healthy network, even though it's working well, right? At the end of the day, visibility is crucial. Be able to understand that a good thing that was built well is actually operating well is essential for the day 2 operation of a network. You can build, we can engineer things amazingly, but if you have no idea how it's running after you put it in, it's kind of hard to understand really how healthy that network is, right? It's working, but is it healthy? Right, and a lot of times healthy networks are determined too late. They're postmortems. If you think about networks in a medical sense, right? We get our blood work done. We go to the doctor, we get our physicals done. We do all these things we don't like doing. We know we should do it because it keeps us healthy. We keep track of things. When it comes to networking, we wait till the flat line occurs and the network is dead and then say, hey, we should have done something about this. So a healthy network is a network you can understand what's going on before it breaks.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ed. It's often an afterthought. And it's more of a reactive posture. And, there's a real need to move into a proactive posture. And I think network assurance tools help in that regard. But Alyssa, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add kind of from the packet perspective that really customers just need to choose wisely. If they're building an IP-based or an Ethernet-based network, either layer 2 or layer 3, most vendors do offer similar products with similar features. But when you look at overall network health and where the difference lies in the quality, it's beneath the surface. So I think, customers need to consider, does the vendor own the network that they're proposing? Did they build it themselves? Do they operate it, continue to invest in it? I think these are the things that really make a difference. With that kind of network ownership, the vendor has full control over diagnosis and repair, to Ed's point, should something go wrong, and that really streamlines and accelerates the entire process. And if they build it with ample capacity, clients have the ability to, near immediately increase access to additional bandwidth. And if, they built it with considered routing, there's overall lower latency and better throughput. And then since vendors really only guarantee the traffic that right on their own networks, the SLAs really come into play there. They're meaningful and they really matter. And I would just add too, if you add SD-WAN over the top of, one of layer 2 or layer 3 networks, it still makes a difference on, how your underlying performance is. You can replace expensive WANs with less expensive IP circuits, but the IP layer still needs to perform. You need to consider tier 1 ISP, and really making sure that you're using some of the largest providers in the world. Us, the tier 1s, we have, we make up the core of the internet by ensuring that we have balanced and equitable peering arrangements. We can get traffic where it needs to go in a direct path. And in our case at Zayo, we augment the capacity of our peering links when they're just 50% utilized. And the security of the IP layer matters as well. So we participate in RPKI, which is an internet security measure. It ensures that when networks claim authority to announce routes, that RPKI checks the digital certificates to make sure the announcer is authorized. And we also just implemented two-factor authentication for BGP changes, which is, a further protection for those IP customers.
Oh, that's great stuff, Alyssa. There's so many moving parts, right? And there's just so much to sort of, digest and understand. And so as we move into our second topic, I'd love, Alyssa, for you to kind of maybe double click a little bit deeper. And you spoke to a lot of different capabilities that Zayo has, but where should enterprises really be investing in the network?
Yeah, from my perspective, it really kind of, it depends, but there are many options, right? So for I was actually chatting with my husband this morning over coffee, and on this topic. He's a network engineer who designs massive global networks for critical telecom services and enterprise business communications. He's kind of handy for me to have around in my line.
Well, y'all keep the networking in the family, it sounds like. That's pretty awesome.
Fun dinner conversations. But his thought around it, really from his perspective, and he's doing these big, massive networks, is that it's resilience, right? That's the main thing, that you cannot have a failure. That's really not an option. But then there's so many things that kind of roll up into that. You also have to have flexibility and scalability, the ability to increase your bandwidth, have multiple options for your network services. So there's just multiple things that I think are really top of mind to consider. But first of all, is failure is not an option.
Yeah, resiliency, especially in enterprise, application scenarios, is mission critical. That's why enterprises of all sizes pay for quality of service and guaranteed service level agreements. Ed, anything else to add before we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I'll just jump in on the resiliency topic there as well, and a few other things. When you reframe the question, it suddenly becomes a lot clearer. If you went to a business and said, "Look, we're okay with a 1 to 4 hour power outage randomly every month at our office location. That's acceptable for business." People are just going to look at you like you got two heads, right? It's not acceptable to have your office lose power for 4 hours. But when we're dealing with networks and connectivity, that's a pretty common use case. As well as 4 hours is an outage, right? We can keep doing work. Yeah, 10 years ago, that probably worked because you could print it out and you could grab a piece of paper and meet in the conference room and work. That power outage, that network outage, it's really the same thing. Everything stops. There's no more communications, no collaboration, unless you're sitting right next to each other, which today, that's not the case anymore. You're not able to collaborate. Your business just stops. So resiliency is really critical. Now, whether you solve that by a layer one physical resiliency, two pieces of glass going different ways, or you figure out some fancy over the top way of moving traffic around and building lots of resiliency and through other technologies, many ways to solve for it. But once you have that resilient solution, you need all the other things that go with that, right? Security. How do you make sure that the thing's operating well? It's safe. How do you account for those remote workers that aren't just sitting in the office anymore? They're sitting at Starbucks, or they're on a plane, or they're moving around. How do you protect that level of stuff? And so it's no longer just sufficient to bring them back in. You got to make sure that they can work wherever they're working and they're having the same security posture. DDoS attacks, BGP hijacking. Alyssa was talking about that. How do you prevent people stealing your identity online? So there's a holistic security solution that needs to be looked at in terms of how you approach this problem. I talked about health of a network earlier, monitoring, observability. How do you know what's going on and getting information from the network, but how do you take that a layer up and understand observability-wise what the health of the network, like what does that really mean to your business? When this bad thing happened, what does that mean, right? You go to your doctor and they give you your blood pressure and they start having a conversation about weight loss or whatever the things are that you can mitigate it with, right? Observability helps you understand the context of the problem, not just that, hey, interface went down. What does that mean? So the monitoring observability gives you that operational thing. And then the longevity kind of is the result of that, where you have something that works long-term. And yeah, your infrastructure may be the same thing, but your solution, the way you use it, is going to evolve over time, right? We've got people doing MPLS today, people doing DIA. At the end of the day, they're securely passing bits between their offices. The problem hasn't changed. The way they're solving it has changed. So
no, great points. From a security standpoint, this new hybrid work world that we're in, with the disaggregation of infrastructure as well. That's in the cloudification of infrastructure and as a service. That's expanding the threat surface, right? And so that has to be revisited. Lots of discussion around zero trust, authenticating users to applications, not flatly to a network. That's mission critical. And I'm glad you brought up the observability point too. I mean, there's a whole, segment of the industry that's being built around observability tools. There are companies that are being purchased by other companies for billions of dollars. And having that observability really, in my mind, gives a network operator a proactive way to sort of manage and twist the knobs and turn the dials to really dial in the right performance and availability. And that's a great segue, Ed, to our third topic. And this is really broad, but from your perspective and your experience at Zayo, what ails most networks?
Well, there's so many things that go wrong in that space. Inflexibility is a huge problem. There's a lot of customers we deal with, they're stuck with this mammoth creation that they've created. That's a combination of all these different acquisitions that they kind of connected together wherever possible. They have no context. So there's no visibility to what you have. You barely understand who's using what, and you're tasked with overseeing this thing, reducing the cost, and getting a whole lot more performance without that context, without that understanding. It's very, very hard to be nimble without understanding what you're trying to accomplish. And that's a big challenge of it. And there's a lot of money to be spent, and there's a lot of vendors willing to sell you solutions to try and fix that. And just that big kind of technical debt is now a problem, right? It's no longer this blue sky new thing that everyone's building. They're coming into 2023 with a lot of technical debt. Everything's changed. Everyone works differently. Everyone interacts differently. They collaborate differently. There's contracts. There's all these different pieces. How do you bring them together, and how do you kind of move that forward nimbly? And how do you have a much better way of understanding what's going on in the future as things drastically change?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Alyssa, anything to add there? What sort of keeps you up at night when you think about what ails networks?
Really, it's just making sure that customers have considered, back to the versatility conversation, like the different options, where there are potential vulnerabilities in the network, and honestly, where you can make sure that those vulnerabilities are addressed, and you've got the right kind of level of just networking kind of strength built in. That's really, I think, the main point.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I spoke at the top of the broadcast around innovation trends and networking. One of the things that's really occurring and becoming really problematic is just the proliferation and explosion of data, right? With connected cars, they're going to generate terabytes of information on a daily basis. And that data appetite is insatiable, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. And so that puts pressure on networks. And that's why you need the scalability and resiliency. But what can network providers do in that regard? And maybe Ed, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll go back to the observability thing. I think that's a huge thing that network providers have the capability of doing. Many don't provide it today, but as a network provider, we have that information. We should be able to give you context, right? And a great example, observability is kind of this fuzzy word that everyone's kind of speaking to. And a great analogy for that, I think, really helps is in a car, for example. Most people have a tire pressure monitoring system in their car. That little light comes on saying your tire's low. You have a more expensive car, it may tell you semi-real time what the tire pressure is in your car. And that's your traditional, your light on, the tire's low, that's your monitoring. Observability is when you start getting into that, you're monitoring a universal dashboard. That's that little image of the car that's got the 4 tires on it, and each one has low pressure. Observability is when the little alert pops up and says, hey, your back right tire is low, and it's reducing your gas mileage. It's giving you context of here's the problem, and here's how it's impacting some other disconnected part of the thing that is actually connected and impacted. Observability gives you that context of, hey, your network problem's over here is actually causing your point of sale system over here to be slow, which causes your customer, cart abandonment rate to go up. And that kind of context is, that's transformational. It takes IT and network connectivity away from this annoying cost center that drives business and how do you reduce the cost to this, actually, these guys are really important to our business and how well our business operates. And if we can fix things there, we can fix things elsewhere in the business. And that's where suddenly it becomes very real again. This is really important stuff.
Yeah, network operators are used to alerts, and there's this whole notion of alert fatigue, right? Yeah. But what I like about observability, to your point, it brings the context into play, and it helps drive a desired business outcome, right? It's just not an alert. it's an alert, but there's context, there's analytics, and it drives a sort of a smarter scenario and drives a better business outcome. Alyssa, anything to add here before we kind of close things out and go to our lightning round?
Yeah, I was going to just jump in and give some thoughts around kind of the explosion of data that you mentioned from a cloud perspective. And, we know enterprises may turn to a combination of private and public clouds. And companies that kind of put everything into the public cloud architectures are now finding that it's pretty expensive, right? And they're trying to move some of their storage and processing back into their own sites and under their own control. And in order to do that, to have a smart architecture and data management and processing, you really need a good network connecting it all together. And so I think there's some swapping out of public IP connections to AWS, Azure, Google, and others with private dedicated connections, and you can really improve the performance and save on egress fees. Which we're just seeing there's a lot of that out there, the desire to kind of move more into the hybrid connectivity and considering IPVPN or other WAN technologies, but really paying attention to that ownership of the underlying infrastructure.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And there are some industries that are highly regulated, like healthcare with HIPAA compliance, financial services, and some of that infrastructure is going to be on premise, right? And so not everything needs to go to the cloud, but certainly, it's a hybrid. To your point, it's a hybrid model. Disaggregation brings significant CapEx and OpEx savings, but you have to balance that with user needs and workloads and that sort of thing. So great point made there. But as we sort of close out our conversation, it's been great. I've got a few lightning round questions for each of you. And Alyssa, I'll start with you. If there's one thing that our viewers should take away from this session, what should it be?
For me, I think in summary, one size doesn't fit all, but we're here. Yeah. You're not in this alone. Like the network health is, it's different for every enterprise, and every enterprise is a unique business. But if there are any pain points right now, we are here. We can help you fix it.
Love it. Ed?
Yeah, I think I would echo what Alyssa's saying, that there's really good solutions out there. You're not stuck with only one option now. There's a lot of good ways to solve a business problem. Start with your business problem and look at the options. Don't start with the options and try and fit them into your business problem.
Yeah. No, I love it. All right, here's our second lightning question. Ed, we're going to start with you on this one. If you're a network operator, what would be your top 3 priorities to ensure that you're providing a healthy network to your users?
I think at the end of the day, I would focus on why the network exists. Who is it serving? What are your end users? If you're a provider, as a carrier, then our customers are a thing. But if I was in an enterprise, my customers ultimately are the ones that are driving a lot of this stuff. And what I'd be looking at tying that customer experience back to the infrastructure piece, because so often we split the things apart. We don't realize that there's a cross reliance between the two. And I think it's really important to bring those together again, because if you don't bring them together, you don't understand how critical your connectivity and services are to your business and your business outcomes. When you bring them together, you understand that this directly impacts business outcomes. That changes the whole conversation, and your IT and your connectivity solution starts becoming a profit center for your business and a way of improving how you operate versus just being this annoying cost center that you have to pay.
Sure. Alyssa, what would be your 2 or 3 top priorities?
I mean, I have to echo customer experience. I think that really is number one, making sure that customers can really work with vendors, right, and manage the services and products that are offered. And then to be, back to the original point, it's really got to be that kind of network offer and hardening there, and making sure that you have all the versatility you need. But I think that's the big, huge priority and really the third one is security. We know security threats are huge right now, and I think making sure that you have secure connectivity, secure network solutions is in the top 3 as well.
Yeah, and I think now we can safely say that security is no longer an afterthought. It's no longer a bolt-on. Given the geopolitical environment that we live in today, nation-state attacks, ransomware, denial of service attacks, it's got to be integrated into the networking fabric, from my perspective. So, well, our third and final lightning question, and I want to answer this one first. What are you most excited or nervous about when it comes to networking? I'm going to start and say artificial intelligence. I think it's super exciting because it can drive a host of automation and intelligence and self-healing, but at the same time, bad actors can use it to their advantage as well. So I wanted to start there, but Alyssa, what's your most excited, item or fearful item that you think about at night?
Yeah, my most exciting item, and partially because I am knee deep in it right now, is network as a service and really focusing on automation, changing the whole environment of how telecom services are acquired and really modernizing it, making it, everything kind of as a cloud environment. That's really what gets me super excited, and just our ability to dig into these cool new technologies to deliver service fast and in just a new modern way. That's what's most exciting to me.
Awesome. Ed, how about you?
Yeah, I'll echo where Alyssa's going with that thought. I think the ability to have data and understand and get real-time insights into what's going on, I think is huge. The telecom customer experience model has not been the greatest by a long shot historically. It's kind of this black box that you dread to deal with.
Yeah.
Being able to get data out, drive your own analytics, to interact with things, to Alyssa's comment, using an API to make a change or order services and actually having the whole thing work versus just, an API to a mailbox or something like that kind of has this appearance of automation. I think that excites me, that there's this true kind of evolution from the ground up in the space to really truly get there, and not just try and have a good face on it with a lot of manual things behind it. I think there's a lot of really interesting evolutions there. We saw it a lot in the cloud where it's very easy to do it in software. Now we're seeing the physical side start to come to life, and the layer one up automation is starting to really take off in the space. It's going to be quite transformational because now you've got companies that exist just to balance workloads in the cloud.
Yeah.
What's that going to do in the physical space, right? It's going to get very interesting as people learn how to optimize very, very small volumes and tweak things, and getting really rich data to drive really intelligent decisions. So you have a software defined network experience that's not just one piece of it.
Yeah, automation is exciting. It's a topic that I cover and write about quite often as a Forbes contributor. And at the end of the day, network as a service only happens with automation and orchestration. So, but this has been a great conversation, Ed and Alyssa. I want to thank you for your time. Great insights. I want to thank our audience for tuning in and leave you with a final thought. Zayo actually offers a network health assessment, and we will provide that link at the end of this webinar. And we encourage you to check that out and to determine how healthy your network is. But with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and have a great day.
Thank you.